And we're live. It is Wednesday, July 9th, another day that the UN General Assembly has neglected. It is the year of our Lord 2025. It is 8 o'clock a.m., and I want to tell you about a thing that happened to me yesterday on the Dog Shirt TV group chat, which, um, you know, has many people in many different time zones, and therefore you get this quality of asynchronous conversation. And yesterday I found myself in the middle of the afternoon being berated by one Holly Berkeley Fletcher, encouraged by one Alicia Wanless, for not giving enough airtime to the dead cactus and the snowman because I had promised to take care of them. And, and I was not fulfilling my end of the obligation. And Holly Berkeley Fletcher informed me, and I said, wait a minute, your instructions were take care of my babies, not be me and put them on the show. And what I had promised to do was revive the cactus by using one of my plugs that would fit and recharge him, which I haven't done yet, but I will today. Not to, necessarily do so in time to have him on TV. And let's face it, the snowman doesn't do very much anyway. He just kind of presides. And so I had not thought of myself as falling down on the job. I had not thought of myself as, insufficiently stroking the egos of two inanimate objects. But I found myself facing criticism for my failures, which are legion and famous. And I pointed out that I had not violated any contractual understandings, and that I was taking care of the babies, and they were both healthy and happy. And Holly responded, I don't have it in front of me, that their egos would be damaged by lack of attention on the show, and that they needed, I forget exactly how she put it, and I just want to say, here on Dog Shirt TV, facts do not care about your feelings. And we are not here to flatter the egos of either the snowman or the cactus. We're going to keep them alive. They're going to get, they get 3 meals a day. They are free, but we do not promise fame and fortune and attention. And that's why we attract people like Alicia Wanless, who, if you tell her she's going to get attention, she like curls up in a ball in a fetal position and makes little whimpering noises. But if you tell her, come chat, hang out, we'll have a good conversation, she shows up. So this is not a place, Mr. Cactus, Mr. Snowman, where you should expect fame and fortune. We have 30 live viewers a day here on a good day. Maybe 1,000 people watch and or listen to it later in the day. This is not high volume television. That is why we can do an impromptu lecture like we got yesterday from Carol Tsang on the history of Tokugawa Japan, which I promise you, that is not a mass market product. That is for the elect. And if you are, here because you think, Cactus, that we're going to make a star out of you, you've just, go find, get an MSNBC contract, go be a CBC announcer. That's not what's going on here. Look, folks, The sun is shining in Washington, and that is a mixed blessing because it means that it's going to be another scorcher. The birds are chirping, and that is not a mixed blessing. It's kind of awesome. It's going to be a great freaking day, and you are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, of which there are more than a few, is that, you know, the Cactus makes an appearance when he makes an appearance. He's a I do not promise he will be here every day. I promised Holly Berkeley Fletcher that the Cactus would be taken care of. I didn't promise anything about his ego. I promised that he would be nursed back to health with an appropriate insertion of an electrical plug. Um, and I promised that the snowman would be safe and happy. Um, Another one of the revolutionary features is that every time Alicia Wanless, please don't close that, it's very hot. Um, Another one of the revolutionary features is that every time Alicia Wanless appears on the show, she is wearing a different thematically appropriate shirt. And you can see now, hearing the coffee maker in the background, why the estimable Dr. Wittes thought closing the door of my cave would be a good idea. And you got to give her credit. It was a good idea if the idea was to preserve all of your very sensitive ears from the sound of a coffee maker and to roast me like an eggplant on the stove. Um, uh, Alicia's got an excellent shirt today. Tell us about your shirt, Alicia.
I mean, I think that you should be taking this differently. If you were to just pretend that you were in a sauna now, then you could derive some health benefits from sitting there sweating. It's just how you
See, the
take it.
problem with that is that, um, first of all, like my little cave here is kind of an awesome thing. I built it myself with my own hands. And so I'm very proud of it. Um, it does not have climate control separate from the house. Um, and because it was kind of imagined as a three-season room. But it has heating, which is great in the winter. But it's not really built for summer. And
Or
here's what,
DC.
right. Well, you know, who knew? Um,
It
uh,
is a swamp. It gets really hot. I've never suffered the way that I've suffered in July in DC.
and that is the reason that I have a window air conditioner in it. But the problem with the window air conditioner in it, which is great for all sorts of purposes, is that if you use it while recording a live stream, it creates a degree of background noise that is, shall we say, inconsistent even with the kind of production values that we aspire to, minimal though they are, on Dog Shirt TV. And so that is one problem. And then the other problem is if you leave the door to the rest of the house open, then first of all, I get the noise of the coffee machine, which is now spouting steam for Dr. Wittes's coffee, and and in turn, she gets the sound of me talking incessantly for a whole hour, which
She
is not,
she chose you and she's kept you for a very long time. Hello,
it's
Dr.
true. I'm
Wittes,
not, look,
if you
it's
watch
not
this
a deal
later.
breaker in the marriage or anything, but it's not ideal either. And so, and then there's this other thing that I've never been able to resolve, which actually maybe John Hawkinson knows how to fix, because I don't actually know how to fix it, which is that I have this, you know, air conditioner that stands up on the floor, but the windows are, you know, they're these uh, beautiful uh, um, I don't know what they're called. They're uh, vertical windows that open this
He's saying
way.
double hung, but
Um,
that doesn't sound like that.
yeah, it sounds obscene actually. Um, but they're beautiful and I love them, and they create, a uh 3 season um I don't know, greenhouse in here where, you can lie on the floor and crack an egg on it and it'll cook. But they don't have an obvious place for venting an air conditioner, and
Sounds like most
neither.
of Europe.
Yeah, it sounds like most of Europe, except in this case it was like, you know I should have thought of that when I built the place, and I didn't because I was young
Oh
and
wait, you
stupid.
built this place?
With my own hands. I
Okay,
said
this
that.
is all on you. This is
Yeah, no,
all
no,
on
it's
you.
totally my fault. Look, everything about this is my fault.
The
Um,
man who grew up in DC, who knew how stinking hot it was.
and who physically built this with my own hands, did not leave a space to vent an air conditioner because my assumption was it's kind of just not, I'm just not going to use it during the summer. It's a kind of 3 season room, all of which was perfectly reasonable and in fact was what happened until the pandemic, when we needed an office space, and I just decided I would put my office in here. And that was around the time, longtime viewers will recall, that the estimable Kate Klonick and I started, uh, In Lieu of Fun, the predecessor show to Dog Shirt TV, and I had to do all my meetings from here. And you'll remember that relatively soon after the beginning of the pandemic, it came to pass that there was a summer. Um, and that is when the problem arose, and all my plans went awry. And I have still never solved the problem. And so, look, we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to do television from a room in which you have a choice of annoying the shit out of your wife or sweating like in a fashion that is simply incompatible with broadcast television. And so I choose, with regret and apologies, option A. John Hawkinson, solve the problem for me. How
Jeff
can I
has
get
solutions
my
too, or
window air
suggestions.
conditioner, which is actually a floor standing air conditioner, to A, run much more quietly, and B, vent to the outside despite essentially floor to ceiling windows that are vertical?
All right, so this is tricky, and the real answer is there's not a good answer. I believe what you have are
Yeah,
casement
I think
windows.
that's right. That's why 4.5, 5 years into this, I still tell Tammy, "No, please don't shut the door."
So I assume your windows rotate open like this. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I
So
have tried putting, like a opening one with a vent space for a little bit of it and keeping it open all the time, and it just kind of doesn't work because, first of all, it's open at the top and the bottom, and secondly, it's a lot of open in order to produce a very small amount of vent.
right. So you have what are called casement windows. I assume they have a crank that you turn to. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
And
don't call them double hung.
sorry, no. I have both double hung and triple hung windows.
Because double hung sounds like faintly obscene to me.
Yeah, those are the windows with it slide up, and there's two portions, a top and a bottom. Or in
I
triple hung,
see.
there's three, and they can all slide up and down past each other and pinch your fingers in awesome ways. Um,
Yeah, that sounds painful.
well, I mean, they have sash cords and counterweights, so that's not supposed to
Right,
happen.
and they exist in New England houses that
Yes.
um are, you know, are really up to date for 1920 in terms of weatherproofing.
So, anyway, with respect to your windows, there people have attempted this, and there are, if you search the internet, you can find some bad solutions. But basically, you have to, of course, fill the space that with some kind of panel, be it wood or foam, and then cut a hole for your hose. And I have lost your video, so I don't know if that means you have lost mine. But it's
No,
tricky
we
and
can see you
annoying.
just fine. Your
Okay,
hair looks
the
awesome, by the way.
thank you. Probably what you really should do is buy a mini split, and punch a hole in the wall for it. Or in
Yeah, I
fact,
can't
if you're
do that
willing,
actually. There's no space, there's no wall to punch hole in.
uh, what about the ceiling?
Yeah, I could go through the ceiling.
Yeah, so that is probably the right answer. But in terms of temporary solutions, the carpenter in you should just grab some plywood or foam and you know, make a wedge of some sort that fits in the space that happens when you open the window, and then cut a hole in that for the duct. You can find some not so awesome examples on the internet, and I think Fred has suggested a commercial product in the chat, which I haven't looked at. So um,
I will
maybe
take a
that
look
works.
at both.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
that
so that is what I tried, and it sort of worked and sort of didn't. And then it did leave me with this problem of the air conditioner just being louder than hell. I mean, not loud, too loud to do a Zoom meeting with, but too loud to do one of these with.
I mean, the
Um,
other answer is pre-chill the room, and that works
right.
pretty well sometimes. That's
All
all I've.
right. Thank you, John.
Alicia, can you
Um,
display the bottom of your shirt so we can read the text?
It says what you think it says.
Okay. Well,
it's kind
actually,
of like Ukrainian women pussy riot shirt.
I actually thought it was a D for duck, and I was in fact a little confused. So uh,
Oh,
maybe
I thought
that's
somebody wrote
somebody
puck
else did, and
Putin.
I anyway, just to so
It's
that
it's
I
less
get it.
offensive to wear out in public. I got this at the beginning of the war. Actually, Olga Beligolova had one, and that's why I had to go and find it because I thought it was great. And it is the second day this week of quietly wearing Ukrainian supporting
Oh,
shirts for Ben and Ukraine.
in your
Oh,
app, I did come on the show, not on time, but you know, at some point with this last week. Anyway, bye
for
bye.
for Canada Day?
For Canada
Yeah,
Day, but not on
John
it.
was very disappointed that neither you nor Eve
You had a
Ev
guest.
showed up for Canada Day.
You had a guest. I checked in. I was prepared to come in and talk all about Canada endlessly, even though I don't have the facts straight.
Canada Day observed on Dog Shirt TV.
Thank you.
Correct.
Actually, fun story in Sweden, I had a closed meeting with the Psychological Defense Agency, and the nice touch was that in the meeting room, they had set up a flag for the organization with a Canadian flag, which I will add, working for an American organization, this is often missed.
Well, it is never missed on Dog Shirt TV. Um,
It's because I won't stop mentioning it.
Wait a minute. We give a lot of recognition to things Canadian on Dog Shirt TV, even without you. But yes, you do augment the matter considerably. All right. Speaking of things Canadian, your elite law enforcement
I
organization.
wait, hold on. You're jumping because there's stuff I didn't get to talk about that you brought up, and
Oh, okay.
so
We're
okay.
going to
For one,
defer substance and remain in the realm of inanities for another few minutes.
hold on. That's very judgy of the things that I was about to say.
Well,
Uh,
it's based on the things that I had previously said.
okay, so source of shirt covered. I did not say where I got Monday's shirt from, which was a gift from the Center for Strategic Communications in Ukraine, who we had worked with for the first year of the conflict. Um, And also, why do we even talk about the cactus yesterday? Somebody who I hope is going to come on had me on their podcast, which isn't out yet, but Chris Carr hosts a podcast called Secrets and Spies, and apparently he is a viewer of this show. Who knew? And he also has his own cactus that somebody gave him. And this features in the podcast. I think he's going to put it in because that was in the intro to the podcast that I was on with him, Secrets and Spies. So I think maybe not showing your cactus is opening up competition for other podcasts to take over the concept.
Well, first of all, as Holly would say if she were here, um, the cactus will go on mission and kill any other cactus that raises, and has already destroyed one that challenges it. And so, if the estimable Mr. Carr's cactus wants to have a cactus face-off on the show, he and that cactus are welcome anytime. Um, and, we will have, the cactuses face off and see who wins. I will refer him to the fate of the other cactus that tried that, which lost the cactus off in a near unanimous vote and then got shredded. And I mean shredded by Cleo the puppy. Um, and I asked the cactus um, uh, about it, whether he had anything to do with the, physical dismemberment of his rival. And he simply responded, "So die all who face me." And so I'm just warning. I mean, the cactus comes off as a frivolous, smiley guy who just says the same thing every day, but he's a fierce beast. And
Why do y'all have to be so violent down there? I don't understand. Does
I don't
everything have to be this aggressive?
Look, we are not the ones whose elite police force just busted up the largest cache of explosives and weapons ever found in our country. Although I will say that that's
I
because
think that
you guys just don't cache weapons the way we do. But the the RCMP yesterday, you guys have had some action up there.
I'm just
What's
going to put a bet on the table that somebody, probably any given individual, has cached more weapons than this, which still is a very serious offense in Canada, has cached more weapons, an arsenal in the US than this bust head. But
Yeah,
yes,
so just for if you want to talk about caching more weapons than happened here, check out my interview with the estimable Mike Feinberg, formerly of the FBI, who before he was forced out and uh, was the acting special agent in charge of the Norfolk field office when they busted the largest cache of homemade explosives ever found in the United States. And he was responsible for the office's program of detonation and disposal of these. And it took more than 8 hours to blow them all up. And and everybody in the office got a turn pressing the button to blow up a thing of them. And yes, he said it was super fun disposing of all those explosives.
okay,
So
just
you're
please don't
still in
downplay the
the
severity of our issue up
you're
here
still
just
in the
because you
minor
guys are
leagues here,
crazy.
Alicia. But tell us about the incident.
It's very serious for us. Thank you very much. But the RCMP yesterday charged four men, including two active members of the Canadian Armed Forces, with being a part of an extremist plot. And allegedly, the whole plot was very anti government. One of the colleagues of the serving armed forces member had said off the record that some of the things that they'd said about Trudeau had been basically, borderline treasonous, if not treasonous. So it's quite bad. It's been an ongoing investigation, I think, for the last 2 years, maybe beginning 2023, 2024. Again, the four men, the apparent idea that we know of so far was that they were attempting to take over some land outside of Quebec City. Nobody's quite sure for what purpose at this point. Um, all of them seem to have had some kind of experience with the kind of military community. Two were, as I said, serving members. One had also been a cadet trainer, and I think there was some other connection with the third one. So there's lots of discussion around how they were maybe capable of trying to recruit. One had an Instagram page that was actively trying to recruit more members. The cache of weapons, which I'm sure all of the Americans in the room will laugh at, was let's see. Um, I got to look this up. Don't have it memorized. Including, okay, so they've been charged with a number of things, including possession of firearms and explosive devices. They had some improvised explosion devices, seizure of 16 explosive devices, 83 firearms and accessories, approximately 11,000 rounds of ammunition of various calibers, and nearly 130 magazines, and 4 pairs of night vision goggles. Which apparently is a different issue because the government is about to issue a procurement contract with an American firm, which had a bunch of people up in arms for night vision goggles for the military, because apparently Canadians don't want to buy American anymore. Anyway, but I digress.
Yeah, can't imagine why Canadians wouldn't want to be buying American products right now.
Considering there was a new tariff put on as well, I'm jumping topics, but Trump is threatening a 50% tariff on copper. And I'm a little confused because the world has been projecting a shortage of copper. Canada has one of the largest caches of copper, unmined copper in the world. And it's used in semiconductors, which is like all the rage, given all the AI. So that seems like a ill thought through move.
Well, now, if Trump announced a policy that we were all going to eat insects, and then somebody said, don't, the eating bees thing because they can sting is an ill thought through move. Um, I'm not sure that would be the right response. That, like the eating flies part is fine. The whole idea of slapping large tariffs on Canada is moronic. And the finding the particularly moronic and self-destructive part of it is, it's true, you're right. But, um, you know, um, if you throw all the people you suspect of being witches in a lake and they drown, and that's your policy, and then the objection is, no, but this one's innocent. Like, okay, you're right, but it kind of misses the point.
I
Um,
mean, I guess there is some copper mining in the US, so maybe he's trying to protect that. But now that you're mentioning of witches, I have to say that again, I'm really jumping topics today, but Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently introduced some legislation, or wants to, that is going to ban, what was it?
I don't know. This is
It's
news to
something to
me.
do with like hacking the weather.
Yeah,
Weather manipulation and geo engine, I don't know, but it sounded like kind of witchcraft, right? Because like so you're going to ban people changing the weather somehow. How will you prove that they changed the weather? Are you going to tie them
yeah.
up
The
and put them in
the
water and see if they
evidentiary
float?
standards associated with magic are tough. And one thing, by the way, that I've never seen, there are all these, like Harry Potter and the magicians and these books that create worlds in which there's magic. But how do you do evidence in a world of magic? And it's actually a really interesting historical question. Like, when people got convicted of these things, what were the real evidentiary standards? But if we're bringing back magic as the way we do stuff, and what we believe in, we have to have better evidentiary standards associated with magic, and this would be a good example of it.
I think that's where you're headed. I mean, there's this part of me that feels that we're one step away from blaming sorcerers for, climate change, but it's not climate change. It's like a
Right, because
weather
you can't say
disaster.
climate change, it's weather
Right.
manipulation.
Because science didn't already prove the fact that this was happening and was going to happen. It was predicted to happen. No, that's witchcraft. Obviously, Ben. What am I saying?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're joking, but you're not joking, right? Like it's
I'm
w-
laughing on the outside, but I'm crying on the inside.
once you accept that we're not accepting the obvious scientific explanations for things, you have to ask the question, why are all these kids getting measles? And, the germ theory of disease is such a boring answer. Um, there's clearly somebody is doing something to give them measles. And once you go down that road, it's only a matter of time before you're burning witches or drowning them, but complaining
I
that
think so, and it feels like it goes hand in glove with an increasing misogynistic viewpoint of the world and women's roles within it. So I don't know.
that one I haven't really thought through of I think you're instinctively, I think you're right that a society that decides, okay, we're making up mythological explanations for things that have perfectly reasonable scientific explanations because we don't like the scientific explanations. It will tend to focus on the there will be a natural tendency to focus on matters of prejudice, right? There was a famous incident in DC in which one of our city council members said that, Jews control the weather. It's not like Baptists control the weather, right? Like and I think there's, when you say the word witch, people imagine women. Um, and, and so I do think there's a lot of truth to that. But I want to come back to Canada, where you guys are
I was
merely.
going to sail on the anti-Semitism ship and bring up Grok because it's
It's
just
been
been
a
a
it's
news
been a
day.
banner week for Grok. You want to talk about Grok? Because I want to talk about the tariffs more.
Well, I mean, we're just gonna like everybody. I'm sure already in the chat knows that Grok went full Hitler yesterday and was spouting pretty anti-Semitic crap, weird stuff too. Like there was one quote like "bagel to," I don't know. It hurts.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about um, the generative AI that's based on training based on human data. Humans do suck. And if you train an AI on human produced data, you're going to get a lot of racism output from the AI.
You
You're
don't say.
you're going
Garbage
to
in,
get a
garbage
lot of
out.
misogyny. You're going to get a lot of stuff about how Roma are sneaky and steal things because that's what people say about Roma, right? You're going to get a lot. And I'm not saying don't use generative AI. It's really good for all kinds of things. It's really useful for certain things. But you do have to have a strategy for controlling the rough edges of the human training data. And if you don't do that, um, you know, people have written a lot of nasty things about Jews over the years. And one reason that people write about Hitler is because it's really risque and cool to say, you got to give it to Hitler. He built the Autobahn, right? And by the way, those Jews had it coming. And, you know, a lot of people have said that shit over the years. And if you amalgamate all the data in the world that people have written, and you create a chatbot that spouts back what people have said, a certain percentage of the time, it's going to say, you know, Hitler did build the Autobahn, and that was pretty cool. And, you know, the trains ran on time in Italy, and you know Mussolini looked pretty cool. And by the way, those Jews and those Roma had it coming. And you know, I don't want to say too much, but he really knew how to deal with gays. Right? You're going to get a certain amount of that if you don't control for it.
Right. This is why I really am not convinced of the argument of that generative AI, chatbots, etc., implementing it into search. All of this crap should be done into the wilds of the wider information environment. There's no argument to make that sound right from an experimental, let's do this and see what happens kind of way. And that includes like a social media platform where unlimited number of people who decide they're going to sign up and say whatever they want can say whatever they want. I don't think that at this point, when I look at Google search, that it's gotten better from the volume of information that is available on the internet that it's taking from to produce search returns. Like it almost seems to be getting worse. So the more information humans produce doesn't seem to be equating to better.
Right. And and look, I mean, I'm not either pro or con generative AI. There is generative AI as a fact. Big companies are spending a lot of money on it. It's going to develop. It's got some interesting capabilities. It's got some unfortunate side effects, like every other technology that affects information animals in their ecosystems, about which, you know, there is a new book.
I was just about to dump a paper in where I was like, where we looked at what you would need to do to actually measure the impact of generative AI. And I would argue that it should only ever be introduced in a very closed information ecosystem and not broadly into the world.
Well, so I will say that this was not a generative AI project, but it was an awesome project. And someday I think it will come to fruition. Um, a friend of mine created a prototype I gave him permission to do it, ingested the full text of all lawfare podcasts, of which there are, you know, several thousand now, and created a chatbot that could respond to remarkably specific questions about the content of the lawfare podcast. Like, what does Jack Goldsmith have to say about the following subjects? And then, you know, it would give you output that was highly, highly accurate accounts of things that Jack had said on the Lawfare podcast. And so this person is currently working on ingesting the rest of Lawfare into this system. But it's an entirely closed system, right? It's not.
It's a limited application.
It's a limited application, and it was, you know, it was awesomely accurate.
Well, because the other thing too is that you can easily verify or know, right? Like this is my other
Well, and
problem with
it's
people using it for
self-verifying.
literature reviews.
It's self-verifying in that its output is essentially an annotated bibliography that refers you to the underlying material, not a kind of, you know, ChatGPT like disquisition in its own voice that may or may not have much to do with the underlying source material.
Right.
It produces essentially an index.
Goodbye, husband. It feels like our spouses are determined to be on the side of the show today.
Well, that's awesome. I think, you know,
I just got a face. I got a face and a reaction for that.
you know, someday, your husband should be a guest on the show.
I'm sure he would happily do. Maybe I don't know. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, like there would be a question of what language we should do the show in, because he speaks so many of them, as do you.
I know, not well. He speaks them well.
Yeah, he really does. And like in weirdly large numbers. He has
Five. He speaks five languages.
5 languages well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I speak 5 languages terribly,
Yeah.
or
Well,
or
I'm with
don't
you.
even yet speak 5 languages. I can read graffiti and social media in five
I can
languages
travel in
badly.
5 countries easily.
Yeah, well, your language skills are better than mine.
No, not really. No.
I have
No, they're
seen I have seen Alicia handle herself perfectly competently in Russian, French, and German, and English. Um, uh, so that's four. Um,
Oh, what's the fifth?
well, I say I have seen you handle yourself perfectly competently in English, Russian, French, and German. Um,
The fifth is Serbo-Croatian.
you have Serbo-Croatian?
Yeah, it's really bad now. I never practice it.
Wow. And you sometimes text me in Swedish.
That's just me playing around. My like Swedish is horrible to learn. It makes sense on paper. Like between English and German, there's so much you can get, but then they do things to the consonants and especially the vowels.
Well, you know, um, the other thing about both Swedish and Danish, I don't know if it's true of Norwegian, except that Norwegian is really, um, at least the written language is indistinguishable from Danish, but the spoken language is not. Denmark is a tiny country, and there are like 20 different dialects of Danish, and you,
It's like
you know,
Norwegian.
uh, Danes can identify, what part of Jutland you're from by the way you speak. It's a degree of regional specificity of language that is, I mean, actually relatively common in Europe, but is, um, we think of, I think most linguists think of Scandinavian as one big language with a lot of local dialects that have, but even the Danish component of it is crazy, crazy specific to location. Anyway, um,
There's a big chat going on about different things, calling out English for all of its crazy dialects, which is true. Questions about whether my issue with Swedish is its own pronunciation. Yes, because it is unlike any other language I studied. It's not like I'm an English speaker being like, oh my God, why can't you be like English? Why can't you just be like other languages and, be other Indo-European languages? Be clear about your vowels. Short of Danish, if you were talking about Danish, there is an entire kind of subgenre of reels on the internet making fun of Danes, saying they speak like they've got a potato in their throat.
yeah,
Nobody
well, that's the
understands them.
that's the Swedish line about,
The
uh,
Norwegians say it, the Icelandic say
yeah,
it, all the Scandies say it.
Danish is Swedish with potatoes in your mouth. I want to say when I speak with potatoes in my mouth, Um, it sounds like English, only I've got my mouth full. It doesn't sound like Danish. All right, I want to go back to tariffs
Okay, we're going back to tariffs.
because
I love
I
languages. I can talk about languages all day long.
because I feel bad. Um, and I'm going to disclose something about what happened over the weekend, which is that I had been planning my um, operation not against the Canadian embassy, but in sympathy with the Canadian embassy. I was going to project Sorry de Soleil on the Canadian embassy when the new tariffs went into effect, which is to say, right about now. But as a result of the late unpleasantness over the weekend, I will just say I no longer have constructive custody of Lord Laser or Lady Laser, hashtag free Lord Laser, hashtag free Lady Laser. they find themselves in the custody of the U.S. National Park Police, along with a rather large amount of my camera equipment and tripods and stuff. And so I am hamstrung in my ability to apologize to the people of Canada by projecting on the embassy in Washington, not to mention a little bit afraid of what would happen to me if I tried it. So my question is, what is the right way for Americans who no longer have access to their lasers, Alicia, to apologize to the people of Canada for a 50% copper tariff?
I mean, you just did. Surely there are Canadians who see this. I know there are. There's some in the audience. They corrected something. The link that I shared, for example. I mean, I have this feeling that the whole tariff discussion is just it's so asinine and so like far from being concluded that it's just tiring to even watch. Maybe that's the point.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like my specific way of talking about issues in public is there's three of them. Well, there's, live streaming slash podcasting, which you can do a combination of sort of humor and serious analysis. There's writing, but
Right?
writing lends itself much better, unless you're Alexandra Petri, to, you know, a serious discussion. It's actually very hard to write about the tariff stuff because there's no issue here to discuss. It's just dumb. And it's dumb and mean and nothing else. And so how many times can say, boy, this is really stupid? It's
I
like,
know.
it's like cutting off
I
your
thought about this in
ear.
the copper one because I was like, you realize that you're pretty dependent based on the whole initiative you're pushing in terms of like arming and AI and all this crap.
Right. It's like,
And copper is in short supply, and we have a big supply of it.
right. It's like, the old joke, cutting off your nose to spite your face. But this is cutting off my nose to spite your face. And it's really dumb. But how many times can you say that? It's like you say, okay, then there's like, I do have now enough photographs to make a cool Canadian hardwoods video. Um, and that would be cool. But like for me, the way to address things that are really dumb or really evil and you writing about them just doesn't do it is projecting on embassies or projecting on walls. And I think there's something elegant about that as a way of saying, standing atop the tide of history and shouting, "This is idiotic."
Well,
And
maybe it's time for a different take entirely. Like we're sitting here protesting or, doing these things. It's not stopping the stupidity. I mean, don't
although
get
I
me
do, I
wrong.
do want to say, Trump did announce on Monday, a mere 36 hours after my abortive operation at the Washington Monument, that the Ukraine was getting its interceptors. And so I do want to say, like, look, correlation is not causation, but we did whatever it is we did up there, and then Ukraine is getting its interceptors. So, don't say it isn't working.
I think that has more to do with him being pissy with Putin.
Well, the question is whether, look, somebody may have projected Mr. President no deals with Putin on the Washington Monument over the weekend. And the question is whether he saw that and said, oh, no deals with Putin. That means Ukraine should get its interceptors.
I mean, I wish that were the case, Ben, but I think it's far more likely that that's how the park police showed up.
Well, look, I'm not saying what happened. I'm not admitting that I did anything, but I'm just saying, like, don't exclude the possibility that this is, that these things are actually highly effective.
Okay, so now there's like I don't know what's wrong with my brain. Is it like the back pain that I've been having, which now I'm convinced from the start of the show is just because I had too much attention for a few weeks on that tour and I curled up into a ball and I'm still in the ball and now it's
Right,
just like
there's
constant
that
back
fetal
pain.
position. If you stay there long enough, it can produce back pain.
So I wonder if there's a connection there. There's a correlation. But then the second thing, there's two other things here. One is that the park police, I was reminded by my husband, who has now been informed that you would like him to come on the show. There's a show on, I want to say Netflix maybe, called The Residents, where I think the park police feature. If anybody hasn't watched it, it was highly entertaining. And then the second thing is, I was going to suggest maybe it's a different approach with the Canadians entirely. Maybe you just got to come here, like nice Americans, if you're concerned and you want to maintain bridges with us, come see us. Because our experiences going down the other way aren't so great right now that we need you who want to still have a relationship with us to come here to our house and be kind and have your events here and do your vacation here. Do the opposite of what has been happening for decades.
So I think this is a great idea. By the way, Mexico too.
Yes,
We
yes.
don't have a Mexican co-host, so we talk less about Mexico than we do about Canada. But you know, Mexico City is these days one of the world's great cities. Pacific Mexico is one of the most amazing places to spend time. And lots of other great things going on in Mexico that you don't hear about. Um, it's a great place to spend time. Uh, I completely endorse what Alicia is saying. I also speak, I don't want to talk about the park police right now. I will have a lot to say about that in coming days. I do, however, want to say a few words about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I know they are not Alicia's favorite organization in the world.
Don't tell everybody that. You can't just tell everybody things that happen in the chat.
Oh, sorry. I don't have any idea what Alicia's attitudes toward the RCMP is. I just want to tell you what my
You just think
experience
they're a
with.
little bit strange as an organization. That's all. I'm
Okay,
fine.
okay. I'm just going to tell you my experience projecting on the Russian embassy in Ottawa, which is, by the way, all on YouTube for those who want to see it. If you think I'm exaggerating, I was staying at the house of one Alicia Wanless, lives about 30 miles from Ottawa. Um, I go there without a permit. I project very provocative things on the embassy for about 45 minutes, and a car of RCMP car pulls up. Um, I have all live streamed a very polite interaction with him, with and he, you will see, conspicuously does not ask me to stop. I kind of volunteer at the end of it to stop because he clearly has legal anxieties about the fact that I'm doing this without a permit. He is relentlessly polite. He is, when I tell him I'm going to stop, he says, I'm not asking you to stop. And I said, I understand, but I've done everything I came here to do. Um, and, um, and I want to say, if you want a model of how police in protests can be, very effective without violating anybody's rights, without being more aggressive than you need to be, take a look at that video. And also, when you do that, think about how aggressive somebody could have been in that circumstance. So, a follow up to that incident, uh, I promised the local Ottawa protest group that I would come back after that incident, and they made the grave mistake in inviting me back of applying for a permit to do this. And if you do that, the Ottawa police will reject the permit, which is, of course, why I didn't ask. And when they rejected the permit, I did not go back to Ottawa and project illegally. And so here is an example of policing that, if the goal was to prevent me from projecting on the embassy, got the job done just fine without even asking me to stop. And by the way, they could have asked me to stop and I would have stopped. I did stop without being asked. Number two, did not involve more than one car pulling up and having a polite conversation with somebody. Number three, left me talking cheerfully about the conduct of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, not saying all cops are bastards and number four, did not treat a routine act of protest that has some elements of civil disobedience as a 4-alarm fire requiring a very aggressive police response, when a simple, "Are you sure it's okay to do that?" question would suffice. And so I just want to say a shout out to the RCMP for doing it right, assuming that what's right is preventing somebody from projecting, in this case, on a foreign embassy, which, by the way, is not a principle I accept. I actually prefer the U.S. Secret Service, the Icelandic police, the Estonian police approach, which is to simply allow it as a matter of free expression. So I don't share the premise that the right thing to do here is to get the person to stop. But if the goal is to get the person to stop, the RCMP, best I've seen, best in class, policing, and again, I'm actually a pretty compliant guy. If a police officer expresses anxiety about what I'm doing, particularly in a foreign country, but also here, when the DC police shown up and told me to stop projecting on the Willard Hotel where the Iraqi prime minister was staying, and I was there with the family of a woman who is being held hostage by Khatib Hezbollah, which is part of the Iraqi government, and I was there with Emma Tsurkov and those of her siblings who were not being held hostage, sending a message to the Iraqi prime minister, and the DC police said, "Willard Hotel, private property, they will insist on pressing charges if you continue." We stopped. So there's a lot of room for police behaving like menches, and getting the job done. And I accept that they have a role to do that. And so RCMP, catching the bad guys in large weapons caches, seizing large weapons caches, thumbs up. And not confusing political protesters who are projecting on the Russian embassy as with those people, thumbs up. Rah, 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 RCMP. There, end of rant.
I mean, thanks. They are a national symbol.
My only complaint about the RCMP when they came to deal with the Special Military Operation Ottawa is that they didn't show up on horses. I sort of think if you're going to be the Mounties, you should always arrive on horses.
Way to stereotype it.
Well, it is in their name. I mean,
Yes, well,
All right,
are there
we
grenadiers,
have
cavalry? They're not really doing that all the time anymore.
look, I don't think we should call people cavalry who aren't on horses. I mean, it's just defining the case down. All right, look, you have frittered away another hour of your life with Dog Shirt TV. Uh, Alicia Wanless, you're a great North American, and a great Canadian and a great uh, American think tank scholar. See how I did that? I honored Alicia's identity and still got great American in there. Um, she's like, I see
I
what
like
you
my
did there,
institution,
motherfucker.
but I just wish we could have Carnegie Canada.
Well, you are Carnegie Canada. And we're going to be back tomorrow. The estimable Shane Harris is going to join us to talk about all kinds of fun shit. There's been some interesting news in the intelligence community. We're going to shoot the shit about that. We may have another cool guest as well. Hey, keep the faith. Um, uh, you know, don't say nice things about the National Park Police. And we will be back tomorrow.